Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, so again, the presentation today I want to give you is going to be filmed, and it's really intended to be for the LA office as well as for the Pacific region. And the whole idea behind today in the next hour is really to praise you. And a number of the themes are up here are really baseline on Cindy's artwork. And I'll talk a little bit about the story behind each one of them, and there's a little bit of a relation to each of the people in this particular audience today. The Power of Us is a project that started probably about 2 years ago, and it was really based on a GLDP, Global Leadership Development Program, that I was involved in, that asked us to develop a process to improve the customer to organizational relationship. Now, that in itself is kind of a broad statement. And when you think about what does it really mean? Well, it means you have to put some thought into it. So what are we going to do different to be able to really enhance that relationship that Colin talks about? And one of the things we started with was understanding that it was from this call to close. So when we have a service call with the customer to the process of closing it out, how do we improve that? One of the things we recognized is that fixing stuff technically, which many of our folks do very well, is not always the issue we face with our customers. Many times it's the emotional piece, is being able to communicate in a way where they really appreciate the value of what we do. So again, as you can imagine, how do you do that? How do you invoke that into the culture of your organization? And so we did it a couple ways. One, Andrew Fagan, who you met at your DGM, him and I embarked on doing a beta test on this. And up in Fresno, we actually got a group of people together and we said, let's do a role play and let's talk about what this is. And we got with small groups of people, we started doing this concept. How would you improve the way you're interfacing with customers? And from there, as simple as that might sound, we really worked with people who might not always be the greatest communicators, but are really good technically, and worked on a process of doing that. Well, from there, we leveraged it into other districts, and we made training films. And from there, we leveraged it to every district in the Pacific region. And from there, that theme was embodied through the whole culture of SimplexGrinnell 2 years ago at our Field Leadership Summit. So part of that message is to understand that a small idea can turn into a momentum that turns into an organizational change. And so as you think about what Power of Us theme stands for on a bigger basis, it's really about what we collectively do as a team. Because we talked about the role that each one of us plays is very specific. And to be able to give a customer the best things that we can offer in every aspect is so complex that you can't be done individually. One person can't do it all. And that is ultimately what the theme of the Power of Us is all about. It really boils down to each of us doing great work every day to be able to take us to that journey of customer satisfaction, which ultimately means growing bigger and broader and better in the eyes of our customers and really being able to grow the organization over the period. When I go back on some of the things I've learned and some of the great stories about the organization and what it's become, I often start back with this concept of attitude. Now, that painting there, as many of you might recognize, is Usain Bolt. And he was the fastest man in the world here a few years ago in the Olympic. And the inspiration of attitude with him is, you might remember him running across the finish line, raising his arms, and that feeling of elation. And in a lot of ways, that's the feeling that I hope all of you get from doing your jobs well every day. Now, everybody plays a different role, and some are more in the front line. I can tell you when Joe and I are in a mediation and we come away with a victory, we feel a feeling of elation. Or when Colin and I are working on a project together and we satisfy his needs, or he gives me the next order, there's a feeling of elation. Everybody in this role has a different chance to be able to shine in that moment, whether it's a technical role, an engineering role, a sales role, a management role. The key is to be aware of it, right? Because the attitude that you bring is infectious to the people next to you. Along the line, I discovered one thing that was really, really logical to me, and it was in the concept of building morale in the organization. And if you think about a line of being all the employees that work in the organization, and then there's a section on the left of positive people, and a section on the right of negative people by nature, but you have this huge section in the middle of people who are poised to react to the stronger the influence. And when we understood this, we realized it didn't take a lot to keep morale positive. It took finding 1% more of positive or getting rid of 1% of negative. And if we do that, we continue to move the organization to a place where they're positive, they're action-oriented, and they're looking to solve the world's problems. I offer it to everybody when we find this, is that when we interview people today, we ask this very question: do they believe they can be that 1% factor that can bring the organization that positive energy they need every day? So, you know, this picture was also a tribute to my one nephew, Josh Bernot. Some of you may have heard, but Josh died in a tragic skiing accident in Canada here about a year and a half ago. Josh was an incredible spirit. He had 30 years old. He was an eye doctor living in Kelowna. He had so much to offer, but Josh had an attitude of a champion. He was a great soccer player. He was a great human being. He was a really smart guy. And so we played tribute to Josh in that particular moment. Along the line, we understood one thing, and that was there was a mission. Now, as I share the story about our understanding of what our mission here was in LA, it was pretty clear. When I was moving through the ranks, there was probably two profound statements that happened to me early in my career. The first one was when I was a young sales rep and I had picked up the book, The 1 Minute Manager. And in The 1 Minute Manager, it talked about this issue of having a personal mission statement. Now, as a young person, I didn't really understand why it was important until I heard about it, internalized it, and then tried it. But at that point in time, there was a statement made in that audio tape that said, my mission as a SimplexGrinnell sales rep is to provide my customers with the good feelings they want from the products and services I have to offer. The key words in that was good feelings. And once I understood that, I started understanding it wasn't about the piece of plastic in the product, and it wasn't about making a sale for the company, but it was really about giving my customer the good feelings they wanted, to build that relationship and to be able to take it to a higher level. When I got that, my whole life changed and I started doing things differently. Not that I did things bad before, but because now it had meaning to me. And all of a sudden it was real clear how to bring my thoughts together on what was I doing, what was the big picture to it all. So that was the first profound thought. Now, over the next 20 years, the idea of mission statements became in vogue in many companies. And we all created them, and we kept going down that road. But my second meaningful event was when I moved to LA in 1999, I thought deeply about what was the mission that we wanted to create, or that I wanted to create in that new role. And it came to me, and it said, to make it the best place to work in the world. It didn't have to do anything with financials, had nothing to do with the customer satisfaction. It was really the leading indicator, because I really believed that if we could make it the best place to work in the world, where people loved coming to work, achieving results, all that other stuff would follow suit, and then people would respond, and the customers would be the beneficiary of it. What we found is it worked. And I think that one of the things that we're most proud of is that that mission has been challenged through the Pacific region, and we've embodied it. As I understood the mission, though, there was one more thing, and that was what was the vision. Now, this particular painting, can anybody make out what does that symbolize? Man, what do you think? What do you see up there?
A bunch of different eyes.
Eyes, and what's in the center?
I can't see what's in the center, actually.
Ronnie, what do you see in there?
No eye. Letter eye.
It looks like a punching bag, but I'm not sure.
It's a can.
Okay.
It's a can. I can, Bill. So the story is when Cindy retired from the school job, she was really anxious to get into her painting, and she was looking, so what am I going to do? Who am I going to paint for? And we said, we got this huge building in Santa Fe Springs. We can keep you busy for years. Well, we did. But some of the early drawings or things were, what are we going to paint? And we tried to figure out ideas. And the first day we made a bunch of napkin drawings of just motivational type things. And we had this one that was an eye in a can. And this is what it morphed into. Well, that painting sits up in Kelowna, British Columbia today, in Josh's office, where his wife still has her eye doctor practice. But it's perfect for an optometrist, right? But the issue about vision really became more about what is it that we want to create. So we have this mission about what we want to do. We want to create this great thing, but what's the vision of what we want it to be? What is it going to feel like when we get there? What are we going to accomplish? And along that line, we created a lot of things. Like we know we wanted to create this great journey for the customer so it wasn't a bumpy road. And we wanted our customers to recognize that we were the best at what we did because we found a way to make a better plan than everybody else out there. And we had better strategies, and we had better intent, and we had better people. Because it ultimately was a competition to see, could we do it better than anybody else had done it before? And that vision was also to grow, because we knew that if we had really good people and we had really satisfied customers, we could logically expect to be able to grow and make it a bigger business. Well, we did. And we started, if you think about both from the local level and the organizational level, when I joined the company back in 1987, we were a $220 million company. Today, we're somewhere about 2.8 billion. So, I mean, it's grown a lot in 28 years. If you think about the LA district, when we were the LA branch, we were probably about a $10 million operation. Today, this organization would be about 50 or 60 million. So it's grown a lot, and we've gotten much bigger, we've got much broader. But we needed to have a vision, and it's still the same thing that all of us need today, is what's the vision of what we're going to do next? What's the next 5 years look like? What do the next 10 years look like? And that's now the responsibility of Andrew to be able to lead you in that discussion to create the possibilities, so that from there you guys are proud to be able to say that you're part of one of the best organizations in the world. Now, along the line, I was really big in developing these mental models, and I came up with what was called the success model. And I've already kind of described this to a greater degree. But when we came up with this model, we realized that it all starts with the energized employee. Because if we can bring in new people and get them so energized that they just love coming to work and they're feeling really good about contributing to the customer experience, we can count on getting great kudos back from customers and great customer sat scores and all those things that come together with making a better team. This model was something that we published along the Pacific region for the last 6 years, and I think everybody recognizes the validity to it, and that's why everything that we try to do is focus with employee first. And everybody in this room, I mean, sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't, but the ideal is we want everybody here to feel that you control the outcomes. You are able to control the environment that you're creating through your beliefs, through your attitudes, and through the way you approach the day. Now, to get to that point, that we thought deeper, and many people who have gone through high school psychology class recognize Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this is where we came to understand, like, what was the essence of why were we not getting there? What was holding us up? So many of you realize when you look at that graphic, there's the basic level, which is we need to have food and water every day to be able to think about anything higher than that. And the good news is we've got plenty of that in the back table, so you guys are good for at least the next 2 hours. But after that, then, we had the next level where we had to worry about having, safety and security. And fortunately, most of the people here have a place to be able to, get out of the rain and to protect themselves from the wild animals. It was after that that we moved into that area called self-esteem, and that's where we start getting some variability, because we know that to get to the highest level, which is self-actualization, we can't do that unless you feel good about yourself every day. And that's one of the things that we're challenged with, because different things will affect people, real life issues, family issues, very life issues, health issues, monetary issues, which all can affect the self-esteem. And if you don't feel good about yourself, it's pretty hard to go out and serve the customer to the highest degree that we're looking for, where your heart and your soul, you recognize the reason why I'm here is really not about making money. It's really about taking care of human beings and about providing something greater to the world. Become a huge piece of the understanding of how we have to get there. So a big part of it is you have to take care of your teammates, and we've got to be on the lookout to, are we taking care of the organization's best interests? Because if we don't take care of people's pride, their dignity, their respect, and really live that to a high level, we're probably not getting the most out of our organization's need. Now, this painting is upstairs, right? We got a bunch of the sports series up there. This is a picture most people recognize as Muhammad Ali. Now, when we talk about strategy, the reason we put that word next to Muhammad is last night I pulled up the YouTube video that was the Rumble in the Jungle when they fought in Zaire against George Foreman. And I remember seeing this thing years ago, and it really intrigued me, because if you remember the fight, this is where the classic rope-a-dope fight takes place, where Ali takes a beating from George Foreman for 7 rounds until finally Foreman had punched himself out, and Ali came down and then started using his skills to be able to beat him. It's one of the amazing strategies when you think about strategies in sport, because it became pretty clear Muhammad Ali was not able to punch and keep up with the strength and size of George Foreman. And so he had to come up with a strategy. And if you watch this documentary, he discovers it really right before the fight. Nobody in his crew knew he was going to do this, but he was thinking. To win, he had to have a strategy. And after the first round, it was really clear in his eyes what he had to do, because he couldn't outbox him, he couldn't outmove him, because Foreman along the same line was having a strategy on how to cut off the ring. It became a genius in his mind to be able to figure out how to play upon what he had available to win. Think how it relates to us in the strategy of our lives and our business. For all of us, we need to know, we talk about strategy all the time. What's our strategy to grow the business this year? How are we going to do it? And that might get into whole new avenues of business. It might become a better way to take care of a customer, to take a look at what the projects that are coming up. One of the ones that was probably the most profound to me is when I was in a conference room in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1996, and was working with a number of the sales reps on how are they going to achieve their goals. And through brainstorming on a whiteboard, we ended up coming up with what was called the donut chart. I know Stephanie knows it well because we distribute it to the sales reps on a regular basis. But it was one of those profound moments where there was a moment of clarity on how we developed a strategy to be able to put together our plan for the year. And we found that that strategy worked for more and more of the sales reps in all the different positions. But then that concept of the strategic planning got bigger and broader through the organization to where I actually was involved with the development of our strategic planning process for the entire organization, because as an organization we believed how important it was to take the process of thinking more deeply into how we were going to achieve our goals. And that was something that is now gestated into our normal plan of doing things today. Most people who have been on any conference call today hears the term big rocks. Well, that term big rocks came out of here. We talked about big rocks. The term big rocks comes from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen Covey talks about this concept of first things first. Okay? The analogy is directly related to the symbol of this. You've got a vase, and you fill the vase up completely with water. Then you take a rock, and you put the rock in. What happens to the water? Overflows, right? Because you're trying to put the big things of your life into an already full vase. So the converse of that, right? You take an empty vase, you fill it up with the big rocks first. Then you fill it up with the pebbles, then the sand, then the water. It's a model of effectiveness. And one of the things we realized that this concept of big rocks, the 80-20 rule, the Pareto theory, relates to almost everything in life. And so the concept is for us to achieve our goals, we talk about what are the big rocks, because there's always a couple big rocks that make a difference in our lives, in our jobs, in our performance. So normal, one of the big rocks was collecting the CSUN money, right? That was right? Or collecting the POLA money, or whatever it was, right? We know that there was a couple big contracts out there that had to be done. In the terms of bookings, it was always a big rocks that were going to make the difference for us this month. And the same thing that holds true in virtually every aspect of our business. So that theory of big rocks is deep and rich within the organization today. And in any conference call around the company, you might be hearing people talk about what are the big rocks we're working on. It started here in the LA office. Along the line, there's this book and writing called The Strangest Secret. If you go up on YouTube and type in The Strangest Secret, you're going to hear an audio clip by Earl Nightengale. Now, Earl Nightengale was circa 1945, one of the preeminent success writers ever. And Earl wrote a series, an audio tape series called Lead the Field. Lead the Field had such a profound effect on my thinking. I bought it in 1991, and I listened to it continuously for 2 days when I traveled from Toledo to Dallas to take over a new assignment. I learned so much about the concepts of success and thinking and everything about leading yourself. But one of the most amazing things that came out of this particular thought was that, as the quote refers to, you become what you think about. And the thing that really was profound about Earl and his talking was that everything that goes into your brain is somehow turned into an idea that turns into a result. And so as simple as it is, you think about the kind of control we have over outcomes in our life. So you have an idea, you have to act upon it. You got to be thinking about it all the time, because those things you think about most is what you become very, very good at. And I will tell you, there's a couple things in my life that I think about all the time. One is, how do I become a better husband and father? And Cindy and I have been together since high school, and I still think about it. How do I always become better at what I do and serving her? The other part was SimplexGrinnell. For 28 years, I was absolutely passionate about everything I did to be the best at what I could do. And the great thing is, I achieved it. It was what was important to me. It's what I focused on, and it's where I got results to be able to become better at every aspect of what it is. This thing is such a profound thought that you can't really give it credibility in this type of setting, because it can go right over top of you, how simple it is and yet how absolutely huge it is. All you have to do is determine what it is that you want, and you'll become that. We discovered that. And matter of fact, one of the greatest things I'll relate it to something that just happened this weekend. 5 months ago, the Pacific region was down $4 million to our budget. And we were definitely in no way going to be able to make it up, because the second half of the year is always when we have ramp up budgets. But we rallied together. We asked the team to buy into doing all we had to do to come up with the ideas, to build the budget bridges we need to. And ultimately, the next 5 months, we had record performances for 5 months in a row. And when I say record performances, in the last 6 years or before that, we have never performed 5 consecutive months like we did. Last night, when the first pass numbers came out, we were there. We achieved our goal because everybody collectively gave it all they had. Many of the offices, the way we're measured, you can cut off at a point in time and know you can sandbag for next year. We had offices in Honolulu and San Francisco that gave way more that was in their best interest because they believed in what we were trying to get done. The LA office here had our best month 2 months in a row. These last 5 months have been epic for the district as well. We've got so much momentum building right now, but I will tell you, it's because we became what we thought about. It's what we talked about. And it was about the planning we put in place to be able to figure out how we would achieve that result, and we did. There was a point in time where this became probably the most important revelation that I ever crossed. How many people here, by show of hands, know who Viktor Frankl is? Okay, so we got a couple people. Viktor Frankl wrote a book that was called Man's Search for Meaning. Now that was his opus. But where we first heard about Viktor Frankl was when he was a prisoner of war in Nazi Germany, prisoner of war camp. And he was a psychologist, so he had the advantage of kind of understanding what was going on with human beings and how to be able to work through a very difficult situation. He was being beaten like all the other prisoners. He was being stripped of his dignity. He was being starved, beaten, all the other things that happened to Jews at that point in time. But he came to a profound understanding when he was being tortured. He came to realize that although people could take away all of his comforts and take away a lot of his other human assets, they could not take away his ability to respond. And he came up with this concept. The gap between stimulus and response is freedom. It was so profound when you think about the concept behind this. If you recognize that no matter what happens in your life, that moment there gives you the choice to be able to respond any way you want. Nobody empowers you. Nobody can take away your ability to do what you want to at that moment in time. That becomes a earth-shaking revolution for most people's minds. Because now you can no longer be hurt. You can no longer be in any way manipulated because you can choose. And that becomes a profound thought about leading to our lives to be able to give better service, to have better relationships, and to be able to be in total control. So Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Thanks to Andrew, one of the things we discovered back about 6 years ago when I first became region manager, we were a group of districts that were not really communicating at a higher level, but we recognized that there was this awareness that together we could do more. We stumbled upon probably the first success rater of all time, which was Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill, for the story, was hired by Andrew Carnegie to work for 20 years for free, no money, to go and develop the greatest story of success that had ever been written. Now, what Andrew Carnegie did give him was access to 500 of the world's top thinkers of that time. One of the key takeaways that he developed was this concept called the Mastermind Alliance. Now, the Mastermind Alliance is founded on this concept that man, woman cannot exceed mediocrity without the help of others. So when we understand that, this concept is that if we work together, 2 or more people working in perfect harmony for their mutual benefit, we have this ability to be able to take things to a higher level. Well, with the help of Andrew and his other DGMs, we sampled this, we worked on this, and we developed what was called the NORPAC and the SOPAC within the Pacific region. And then later we formed what was called the ICEPAC. But to say it was a profound takeaway would be an understatement, because as we started working this and buying into it together, we started using the time and resources of different districts, and it changed the way the business looked. Both on the performance level, on how we were able to perform more work, how we were able to control better cost, how we're able to come up with shared ideas and leverage best practices better, but also in the uniformity and the collective bonding we had with each other. And over time, as we looked, what we created, the Pacific region clearly became an outlier of sorts because we became recognized as a band of brothers that really did work in harmony, and we had fun together. And that was one of the things that we found, is by building that team together, that mastermind alliance, we were able to take performances to a higher level, have much more fun, and build this team cohesion that really exists today and continues on today. This particular painting is sitting down in the San Diego office. It's a picture of the Coronado Bridge. And a great saying that's embedded on here is from Og Mandino. Now, Og Mandino is the author of The Greatest Salesman in the World. It's a book that is, again, another highly inspirational book about not only for sales, but for life in general. It talks about the scrolls of success that were embodied in that. The Greatest Salesman in the World book was really inspirational to me as I read it, understood deeply about what are some of the things that led to success. But one of the key quotes in here from Og was, "Today I begin a new life. I will greet the day with love in my heart." And if you think about our journey here, many people recognize when we come together in a day, my conscious intent is to bring joy to the work world, right? To be able to come and let people know that I recognize them, that I see them, that I care about them, and that we really are. We're bringing a happiness, we're bringing love to the workplace because you're important. Everybody that works within this organization is important. Everybody in the world is important. But we have the ability to bond closer together in this group setting because we are fortunate enough to be able to know each other at a deeper level because of all of those transactions it takes to be able to satisfy the customer. So the fact that we're able to wake up every morning and consciously understand that, again, it goes back to some of those other things, right? When you wake up in the morning, do you consciously determine to be positive? When you wake up in the morning, do you do those things that are the challenging things first thing in the morning to be able to start your day off right? Whether it's exercising or whether it's reading, whatever it's doing to be able to get you in the frame of the mind to realize that this is the most important day. And once you get into a routine of doing that every day, we find out that it becomes easy or easier. But it does start with this active intent. What's important to me? What is the reason why I'm here on the world? To be able to help my brothers, sisters be able to do great things today. The concept of learn and grow came out of the concept that there is no fail. All you can do is learn and grow. And once you understand that concept, a lot of us are afraid of attempting, especially if you think about, I'll say the world of sales, because there's this fear that if the customer rejects me, I have failed. If I don't get my job booked today, did I fail? If I let Andy down, did I fail? But it gets into the point, did you try, right? And if you learn from what happens and you grow from that, that's essentially what makes us what we are, right? Back to Earl, remember, about what we are, we become what we think about. Same concept. We are the sum total of all of our thoughts and actions to date. So if you keep trying, if you get more repetitions, and if you give a go to it every day, you're going to find out that there's going to be some things that don't work. They don't have to be called failures. You just learn from them. You change your strategy, and you realize that from there, that's how we can ultimately get to the end result we're looking for. So, Shay knows, we've tried a lot of things within the Pacific region in a short time. Some things work better than others. But the whole issue is you got to keep trying, and you got to be consciously aware of what's going on in our environment that's going to lead us to the ultimate successes in there. And along that line, that means you got to innovate once in a while. So we used to call this creative thought. But we recognize as a group, we were not innovating enough. Our skill set as strategic thinkers and innovation was not as good as what it could be. Meaning that if we got better at it, we might have better results as an organization and become better leaders. So that's one of the things we looked at. We brought in a talented group of consultants. Brett Richards, we've had in this room here from Toronto a couple times, to work with our leadership team and come up with ways to be able to engage that part of our brains to be able to become broader in what our thinking was. And if you look at how the innovations have poured out over years, we had many of the sales programs, customer connections. We've got most recently technology advancements like MDQ that many of our techs are working on. But all of the process and procedures that we put in place that are a direct derivative by getting people to think together, how do we make things better? It's true with everybody. There's no limits on who can take innovation to the next step. There's no limitation on who can bring creative thinking to the job. And those are some of the things we recognized by our performances over the last couple of years. Now, many people know that that I'm an active person when it comes to exercise. Colin and I used to see each other at the same gym for many years, and now again we're at the same gym, so we see each other about once a week. But one of the things that I recognize over time is that there's something magical that happens with health and fitness, and that is this thing called endorphins. And when you work out hard, it has this effect on you that makes you feel even more positive. So I'm not quite sure if I feel positive because I exercise or if it's part of the whole makeup on it, but either way I know that I feel much better when I do than don't. And I know that this past December when I came down with pneumonia, it was the first time that I've ever been in a hospital for 4 days, and I know that what it feels like to not have the energy you need to sustain yourself. So the health and fitness piece of our lives is critical, and we recognize that there's certain things within your control, some things that are outside of your control. But I think even as Miro points out, Miro has been very conscious about his steps per day since our global challenge. But the fact that we're thinking about it, you're making every effort you can to be able to do something about it, is a critical piece for all of us to be able to sustain our energy levels so we can be the best we can be for yourselves. That translates then into the customer experience because you feel better about yourself and your ability to perform your work. I think the other thing we've learned along the line is this concept of having faith. And as many of you know, Andrew mentioned Bernot Best, is starting. Joe helped me to get incorporated. So Bernot Best is a collective endeavor between me doing consulting work of whatever that is, and Cindy's creative work, her art, and anything else that might become, or Nate and Matt's creative work, whatever that might become. So I can tell you, I don't know what it is for sure, but I can tell you I have faith that it's going to be successful because we've learned so many things through the last 28 at SimplexGrinnell that there's absolutely no doubt that we know the formulas that are going to lead us to continued happiness, continued success. But the faith, has to be bigger than that. And I recognize one thing is that my best battles are not done yet. I know that I've got the faith to know that I'm going to accomplish great things before my time on earth are done. And I think that's the key takeaway message for all of us. I do recognize that it's not easy for any of us. Everybody here has different challenges for different reasons, and there's no guarantee that you can work out of it by yourself. But I do believe this, that you have to have faith that you can work through it and that you can have a plan on how you get there. I see Larkin in the back too. I know that him and I had faith many years ago. We created what was called our special projects group, and we just had an idea, we had a vision, and it worked, and it continues to work. And as I look around the room, there's a lot of things we had faith in. I know when we had faith when Alfred wanted to become a sales rep. We were sitting at the Bonaventure Hotel after our Christmas party, and I had faith that Alfred was going to do a great job, and he does a great job. And as I look around the room, there's a lot of those faith stories that we just absolutely know work, and they do work. But it all starts with belief, faith, and knowing that the future is going to be bright for us. Many of the managers in the room here had the benefit of going through a presentation at one of our field leadership summits with Ed Ruggiero. And Ed is a great writer that talks about military history and also then translates it into a leadership journey. One of the things that Ed worked with us on was to be able to develop our leadership philosophy. And I know Andrew's got it. I've got a copy of his. I know that Stephanie's written hers, and there's other people in the room that have it as well. One of the key reasons why we do a leadership philosophy is so we can post to the world in writing what we stand for, what's important to us, what do we feel is non-negotiable, and what do we expect out of the people who work with us. So, it was a profound takeaway for our journey, and I would like to spend a minute to share with you my leadership philosophy. So here's what I believe. I believe that to have the privilege of leadership, I first must lead myself. I believe striving to achieve personal leadership is what makes me feel worthy of self-respect, motivates me to be a positive impact. Personal leadership is founded in living a principle-centered life. My principles are to be a positive force, to learn and grow, to be a contributing member of the community, and to appreciate the uniqueness of others. I believe that personal leadership is a constant journey to become better through daily reflection and personal challenge. It's to have no regrets about decisions. So appreciate it's taking action today. I believe personal leadership is an understanding that I am limited today only by my current experiences and thinking. My growth and potential are unlimited. I continue to move forward through self-awareness. I believe there is life beyond death, that life is the ultimate gift, and what I make of my time is sacred. I believe success and peace comes from applying all my energy to a worthy goal. I believe in patience. Results often do not come fast enough, and if they did, they would be not so gratifying. I believe in service than rewards. I believe in humility and quickly admitting mistakes. I believe in healthy living and exercise. But here's the wrap up. I mean, and the one thing that I learned from, I read the book from John Wooden, which was his book on success. So most people know from California, John Wooden was the greatest basketball coach of all time at UCLA. John, he wrote a book, and he had this pillars, the pyramid of success that many people have seen on different graphics. But one of the key takeaways was of his recognition of success was this concept of achieving personal greatness. Now, the concept of achieving personal greatness is ultimately one of the greatest awarenesses, because it's not limited to only one person who wins the award. There's not one best of. The beauty of achieving personal greatness is we can all achieve it every day, and you can live it every day, and you can repeat it every day. But you just have to be able to put together the right formula. You got to approach it the right way. You have to have the right attitudes. You have to be able to be proactive. You got to be able to work on big rocks, be able to put the pieces of the puzzles together. I put this picture up here. Cindy did this one. It's upstairs as well, and it's a picture of Kirk Gibson. And I'm sure most people remember the story all too well from 1988. And I'll give you the build-up a little bit, because if you remember, if you watch the audio of this thing, it's wonderful, right? Because you have Kirk Gibson, who couldn't play that day. I mean, he was essentially out of the lineup, and Tommy Lasorda really wanted him to be able to play, but they could see his knees were racked. He had a rough season, so he was not equipped to be able to go in and play. Well, the game was working its way to the last inning, and they were down 4-3. And they came in, and Kurt said, "I think I can go." And Kirk Gibson then came up to the plate, and if you remember, he first comes up and he fouls off a couple balls. And so he's got 2 strikes, no balls. So Eckersley's looking at him. He hits a little nubber down the first base side, and he's barely able to hobble down there. Fortunately, it went foul. He holds off and gets to a full count. And then you can watch, if you watch the video, there's a moment where he's batting, and he steps out of the batter's box at the last second, because something came to his mind about a conversation he had had with his batting coach that said Eckersley has a tendency to throw down and away when he's got a full count. He stepped back in trusting that was going to happen, and the rest was history. Hit the home run, changed the series. They went on to win the World Series that year. What was so profound about this whole thing is when you listen to Kirk Gibson even talk about his career. He wasn't the greatest of players, but he was a player that had a few great moments. I will tell you, that was when Kirk Gibson achieved personal greatness that day. So that's my message to you. The one thing that I leave, after 28 years, I went from being a sales rep in Cleveland, a manager in Toledo, a manager in Dallas, a region director in the Midwest, and then I came out here in 1999 because I really wanted to know, what did it take to be able to make Simplex a dominating force in the West Coast? It always intrigued me, and I wanted to find out what it was. And I wanted to apply all the things that I had learned along the way to see if I could prove it out here as well. And we did. And I think that was one of the greatest things that I realized from my time out here in SimplexGrinnell. They gave me the opportunity to be able to have the freedom to lead and to love the organization. It's deep in my soul. It's going to be hard to leave it, but I do feel like we're in good hands. I'm entrusting it over to Andrew Fagan, and I'm not too far away, so I got to keep a watchful eye to make sure that you guys continue to do the job that you were hired to do. Thank you very much.